And we're going to continue that with Congressman Brian Bilbray right now. He joins us this morning.
And you have a very special event planned this morning in Cardiff. Tell us a little bit about that memorial.
Yeah, well, the firefighters up in North County, and they actually, you had the Carlsbad and the Cardiff and the Encinitas firefighters say they wanted something in the community in North County to specifically recognize that this is a day that we should all remember. We should all reflect on what it meant and how it changed America, and basically make sure that we appreciate the sacrifice that were made by the heroes.
Let's talk about New York a little bit. We keep showing shots of Ground Zero and the situation there, and enough has been said about this Koran burning thing. But just the site itself, do you think it's going the way it should at Ground Zero?
I don't know. You know, I'm a little more confrontational to confrontation. My reflection was we should have built the building right back up, right into their face. I think for it not to be reconstructed, to some degree, was a victory for the bad guys. That's just my, you know, when somebody knocks you down, get right back up and challenge them to do it again. And so that's just my reflection. But that's easy to say because I don't have the responsibility of being the mayor, being the port commissioners to make that decision. But I would have loved to have seen it built right back up into their face. I think that would be the greatest monument we could do for survivors.
Let's talk a little bit about that day 9 years ago. You have some pretty vivid memories. I'm sure, as we all do, we all remember where we were and what we were doing. Share that with us.
I was actually a block from the White House when the plane started hitting. And then we were called out of the meeting with the commissioner, immigration commissioner, and that's when the second one hit. And the commissioner said at the moment the second plane hit, the immigration commissioner said, "You imagine being the agents who let these guys into the country." And what a message, because he immediately had an instinct that somehow the immigration system might have failed and these guys shouldn't have been here. And history has proven they shouldn't have been here. They were illegally in the country. They had overstayed. And it's kind of a lesson to us that when we talk about the threat of people being here illegally, it's not just people coming from the border. Everybody likes to talk about the border. But we were talking about people who were overstays, and people were allowed to go to flight school, even though they were illegally here. And then Virginia gave them driver's licenses so they could get on the plane without showing their Saudi Arabian passports, which might have gone. So this whole thing with the 9/11 Commission really hit home with me, because I was there at what would have been Ground Zero if they had found the White House. And this commissioner really showed, and we have tried to do those reforms. We've done a whole lot of changes.
I continue on that. We have done a lot of reforms. Have we done enough? Yeah,
no, I think the biggest problem is, like, one of the biggest things they said is implement the Real ID bill. The law's been passed. The states have delayed it. But to this day, there are states that are still issuing people driver's license, even though they're not legally, their visas have expired. We still don't have the biometrics that California has had for over 20 years in other states, so you can make sure that people aren't using phony names. That Real ID bill was one of the #1 requests of the 9/11 Commission, of having secure identifications so people can't steal other people's IDs and then be able to use them for terrorist acts.
You know, on this day, obviously, we're covering all of these ceremonies, the memorials, and the reading of the names, and certainly there's a somber, very respectful tone to this day. And at the same time, we're hearing about protests that are planned for later on in the day about the issue involving the mosque, and then, you know, we're seeing the preacher from Florida, you know, the controversy with that. Give us a little perspective. How are you feeling about all of this, as far as, obviously we have the freedom to say what we want and say how we think and feel, but on this day, what are your thoughts about those
I think
protests?
that we talk so much about our freedoms and our rights, but we don't talk about our responsibilities to go with them. Our founding fathers always equated rights and responsibilities together. And we do have a right to be able to say a lot of things, but we have a responsibility to do it in a measured way, in a productive way. And frankly, I think that even the mosque issue is they may have a right to do that, but I think it shows a disrespect, insensitivity to the fact of what has happened in that location. And that really, you know, you don't see Israel going down and tearing down the dome of the mosque, even though it is Israel territory. You're seeing they are respecting the Muslim area there, even though that was the Jewish temple traditionally. That kind of responsible kind of sensitivity. You don't want people to be, basically pandering to abusiveness, but you want to be sensitive, and that's a responsible way to execute your freedoms and your rights. And we got to remind that. You got people that are always trying to push things to extremes, and they are the greatest threat to those freedoms, because when you abuse your freedoms, that is going to create an environment to restrict them.
That is a very good point, because a lot of people have said, you know what, this isn't about freedom of religion. This is about respect and sensitivity, and that gives it an interesting perspective.
Well, I think you've got to remember that all of us as Americans have the privilege of having the freedom, but with that comes the responsibility to use those freedoms in a responsible, productive manner.
All right, if you're home right now and you just feel like you need to get out and help honor today, observe today,
Cardiff State Beach will be down there right after 10 o'clock, and hope to be able to see everyone down there, especially those of us from the North County.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much. From 10 until noon today at Cardiff State Beach, off the highway there, right on the water. Honor our local heroes.
All right.
Thank you, Congressman.
Cool. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute. Stay with us.